Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Gold Mine. We've got two very special guests here. I'm Sam Goldfarb. We got Greg King and Nicely from the Ball Fake podcast. These guys really know their basketball stuff. We're here to talk some NBA draft prospects, and we're just ready to get into it. We got the top 5 kind of rated guys for you, and we're just going to go through, talk about the best possible fit for all these guys. We're going to throw out multiple teams and see what's best. So, guys, how are y'all doing tonight?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just ready to get into this. So I guess the first thing we're going to go into, we're going to start with Cade Cunningham. Obviously, regarded as the top guy in a lot of mock drafts, there is some competition with Jalen Suggs out there. We'll see how that kind of unfolds as the season goes on. But Cunningham, we're going to talk about his game a little bit, and we're going to go into more specifics about teams work best. So what I've noticed about Cunningham specifically, like he's got a great build for a point guard, 6'8", 220. He's very switchable. He can guard 1 through 4, and he's a competent defender, which more than competent in many respects. And he's shown a lot more shot creation ability than people thought he would show going into college, which I think has really boosted his NBA draft stock as if it could be boosted from what it was before. Yeah. So I really like Cunningham. I think he is one of the consensus top 2 prospects objectively. I think he's the number 1 in my eyes. And I'm curious, guys, what observations do you have about Cunningham's game that you like? What are drawbacks maybe that you're noticing a bit, and go into that for me.
I mean, I think this is a kid. He's got limited holes in his game. He's excellent initiating the offense. He's got a strong frame, great size at the point guard position. He's not really a pure point guard, but this is a guy, he's got pretty good basketball instincts, and he's a 3-level scorer as well. So, I mean, he's got a ton of talent, man. He's got a ton of talent.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, I just think that, like, the role that he has at Oklahoma State, I think that he really sets up the offense well, gets everybody in the right spots, and, like, really puts his team in the position that they're in right now. And he's averaging 18, 6, and 3 off of 46% shooting from the field and 38% from the three-point line. So he's showing that he can shoot the 3 very, very consistent, very well. And I like to see that he also gets after it on the defensive end because he has a big frame, uses wingspan. So Cade Cunningham, I mean, I love him. I love him.
Yeah, I really like Cunningham as well. And you bring up a good point with his shooting. I think the questions surrounded him coming into college, 1, the ability to initiate as a pure point guard, and 2, the ability to create your own shot and shoot from 3. He's done all of that very well. I was really impressed. People had questions about maybe how he'd function in crunch time. On Saturday against Arkansas, he straight up took over that game, hit multiple huge shots to kind of put that away. I was really impressed by Cunningham in that game specifically. He's shown he's ready and cut out for the big moments. If Oklahoma State doesn't have their appeal kind of shot down by the NCAA, they're going to be playing in the tournament, and I'm really excited to see how Cunningham squares off against presumably another Power 5 opponent in a first-round game.
Yeah, he's had a lot of clutch moments too. I remember I watched the TCU game. He hit a big clutch shot to win that game too, and so he shows that he's capable of making big-time shots for them. But the downside of him is really the turnovers, and maybe this is kind of misleading just because he has to do so much for Oklahoma State. He does average 3.5 turnovers per game, but his decision-making, I think, needs to get better coming off of pick and rolls and especially playing against big guards, because when I watch him play Texas is really long and athletic, and Shaka Smart really implemented a great defensive plan against Cade Cunningham, really got after him and threw traps and different stuff at him. So he really struggled and turned the ball a lot in that game.
Yeah, and also the thing I've noticed about Cunningham is his spot-up ability and off-ball ability. There's still questions about. I think he's shooting something like 20-something% on catch-and-shoot threes. So with Cunningham in the league, you're not going to be able to play him as much at the 2 or the 3 early on. He's going to have to be the center focal point of that offense. So that maybe limits places where he could fit in my eyes.
Yeah, totally agree.
Where are some places that you feel like is the best possible position for him to be in?
Yeah, so for me, I think we talked about this last night, but for me, the biggest one, Washington, I really like. I think he and Suggs have similar reasoning why they'd fit in Washington. The concern about Washington is maybe the ball dominance of him versus Beal, but he is a willing and unselfish passer, so I think that those concerns are eased. Also, with Washington's defense, we know it's really bad, and with Cunningham's versatility and ability to guard 1 through 4 and his size and length, I think he'll be able to force turnovers, get in the passing lanes, and really harass some opposing players. I think that helps the Washington defense. I see that being a good fit. And also just the way he runs the pick and roll, he's got so many options of guys to run that with. He could run it with Thomas Bryant. He could run it with even Avita. He could run it with Hachimura. And I think he and Beal have some two-way game out of the pick and roll that I really like to see. So I think Washington's a good place for me. Do you guys have a particular one that sticks out before, and then we can go into our second one maybe?
Me personally, I had Detroit, and I know Detroit's kind of a weird spot just because, they've got a ton of young guys also mixed in with older guys, but I feel like once they kind of figure out what direction they want to head towards, he'd be able to come right in and initiate the offense because, he's one of the best point guards in this entire draft class. My only question is, what do you do with Killian Hayes if you guys do draft Cade Cunningham? Because Cade Cunningham, he's a guy you cannot miss on, man. You cannot miss on him. So my question is, would they have to have Killian Hayes come off the bench? I mean, he hasn't been very productive this season. He's averaging like 4 points per game, maybe 2 assists, 2 rebounds, something like that. I'm not sure what his shooting percentages are, but I just feel like, Cade Cunningham, he'd be able to come in, initiate the offense more, make guys like Jeremy Grant better. They lost Christian Wood, but you still have a decent amount of shooting there. But obviously, as the years, progress on, I feel like they'll need probably some more athletic bigs and some more shooting around Cade Cunningham.
Yeah, I totally agree with that point.
Yeah, I would put Detroit actually on there as well. I think in some ways he's better fit for Detroit than Suggs is, in the sense that he is more ball dominant and they need that alpha guy. Detroit just doesn't have that right now. Jeremy Grant obviously is putting up monster numbers, but you need someone who's going to bring the ball down court, initiate your offense from the point guard spot. We know Killian Hayes isn't as much of a scoring threat. His shooting percentages are not very high. I think they're in the 20s, if I'm not mistaken. So right. I think that Cade Cunningham, his ability to kind of initiate the offense, get Jeremy Grant involved. Saddiq Bey, maybe drive and kick to him to hit threes. Saddiq Bey is a tremendous shooter. And then Isaiah Stewart, I think he could partner up very well with him, a guy who's a very high motor guy, good defensive guy, and you can run a pick and roll with. So I think you bring up a great point nicely in Detroit in the sense that they need this ball dominant initiator, and they don't really have that. And I think Cunningham fits really well in that spot.
Yeah. Right. And on top of that, they don't really share the ball well as well. So, I feel like Cunningham, he'd be able to make guys make more shots because they're last in the NBA in field goals. So I just feel like he's an impact player who's going to make everyone, including himself, better overall.
And defensively, again, I think that with all of these teams, they're bottom of the league for a reason, and defense is a major part of that. Detroit, you have, again, another guy who can switch 1 through 4. I know that Saddiq Bey offers you some defense. Isaiah Stewart offers you some defense, even though maybe he's not as mobile as a more finesse big. But I think that you throw him in there, his switchability and just able to guard anywhere from point guard to power forward helps that defense immensely.
Totally agree.
All right, guys. Do you have any other places you think Cunningham could fit well, or could we move on to Jalen Suggs?
I think we're good to move.
We move on.
All right, so Jalen Suggs, one of the more intriguing prospects in this class, obviously. He's active in passing lanes. He's a great defender. Sometimes that aggression on defense he shows can come back to bite him. He is a little foul prone. And on offense, he's an aggressive driver, great passer, but a bit turnover prone. So, with Suggs, there's incredibly high upside. You're not going to have maybe the as high a ball dominant factor as you will with Cunningham, but he is capable of handling and creating his own shot. And he has a 3-point stroke that has been competent, if a little bit streaky in college. I've been impressed with how he's looked at Gonzaga. Do you guys have any areas of his game that pop to you?
Yeah, I love how he can come off the pick and roll, and he really has that feel for the game. I love how he can get to the basket. I love how he can come off the screen and pull up and hit the mid range. I love how he can shoot the 3. And sometimes he does force stuff, but I like the fit in Gonzaga because playing alongside Drew Timming and Corey Kispert, he doesn't really have to do a lot. He just has to come in and just make the right play, and that's what he's doing. Yes, he is averaging 2.9 turnovers a game, but those are good. Those are good for a freshman when he's in that position. So just learning on his feet, continuing to get better. I love what he's doing this season and leading that team.
Yeah, I think Suggs, he's one of the best prospects in this entire draft class, as we already know. He's going to be a lottery pick. He's a 3-level scorer, willing passer, combo guard. He's got a great change of direction. I mean, on top of that, him being a two-sport athlete has kind of helped him along in the game of basketball, just because he's been able to finish amongst the trees towards the rim. And, he does a really good job of initiating the contact. Like I said, I mean, he's also a pretty good athlete. He can shoot the ball slightly off ball. I mean, catch and shoot, it's a little bit iffy, but I mean, you're going to get a floor general who, is going to be able to come right in right away and make the right plays and be an immediate impact for your ball club. So,
yeah, and I like his do-it-all ability. I mean, in many ways, people compare him to Westbrook, just being that he's all over the place, great in passing lanes, good defender, and turnovers are a bit of an issue with him. The shooting has been decent in college, but from three, not exactly completely NBA reliable yet. So you see a lot of comparisons. So when I look at fit, my big one I actually think about is Toronto, even though I don't think they're going to pick high enough. I think that when we talked about this last night, but with Kyle Lowry, there being trade rumors around him being older, you need a guy who's going to step in and fill that kind of do-it-all role, who is a bit more unselfish, who can play alongside Van Vliet, who's going to get a lot of shots and run a pick and roll with Siakam. We talked about his floor general ability, change of direction, combo guard ability. I think that is great in Toronto's system, where you can run a pick and roll with Siakam, or you get other bigs involved, and then you have guys like Fred Van Vliet who can also handle the ball next to you.
Yeah, and he has a high motor. He's really going to get after it. If he makes a mistake, he's going to get after it. He averages 2.3 steals a game. So on the defensive end, you're not losing anything on that side. If he gets drafted by the Toronto Raptors, between Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby, him and Anunoby and Suggs will really, really get after it on the defensive end on the perimeter.
Absolutely. And I think that like Anunoby as well, another great shooter, another great kind of two-way player, two-way wing. Toronto needs somebody to either fill that Lowry spot or somebody to occupy that big spot. That's what we talked about. Somebody alongside Siakam to fill a role that Aaron Baines has struggled to fill, and other bigs have struggled to fill recently in Toronto, or a point guard who is going to take over from an aging Lowry. I think Suggs fits really well there. I also am looking down the list. I mean, we talked about Detroit and Washington. I actually really like Detroit as well. Like we said, they're not sold on Hayes. Rose clearly isn't a big part of the future. You have a guy who can develop with a lot of these younger pieces in a rebuild. It requires them to bail on Griffin. I think that's obviously a no-brainer in terms of just going into full rebuild mode. I like Cunningham personally, as I said earlier, as the face of that rebuild, but Suggs you can't really go wrong with.
Yeah, I'd agree 100%, man. I'd agree 100%. I just feel like the best possible fit, if we're talking about best fit for each prospect, I feel like Washington is a much better fit, just because Detroit, they kind of seem like they not only do they need playmaking, but they also need that number one score. I feel like you stated earlier, Cade Cunningham is a little bit more ball dominant. So I think they would benefit from having him more rather than a Jalen Suggs. So I feel like Washington's a better fit, just because, they got a ton of young pieces. Like you said, Denny Abdija, he'd be pretty productive for them. I feel like Jalen Suggs, he's a guy who, you stick him in the right situation, he's going to thrive. So I just feel like Washington, as long as they get rid of Westbrook, because I don't feel like Bradley Beal will be there long term, despite them coming off of a big win last night. But yeah, I think Washington's a much better fit for Suggs than Detroit.
Yeah, and I had them listed as well. I mean, you talk about, again, needing defensive help. You have a guy like Suggs who can plug right in there and is going to make plays defensively, going to, as we say, great on ball, harass opposing point guards. He's going to be a great fit. And then on offense also, the reason I like him better than Cunningham and Washington is the fact that we know he will defer more to Beal. Obviously, Cunningham is a good and willing passer. We talked about that. But you have a guy like Bradley Beal there who is going to monopolize a lot of touches. The big concern with Westbrook was he's too ball dominant and takes a lot of shots and sometimes will shoot you out of close games. You have a guy like Suggs who knows when to shoot, maybe picks his spots a little better, and will find Beal for those open looks.
Exactly.
All right. I think we've definitely touched pretty well there on Suggs. Moving into now Jalen Green. When we talk about these G League guys, there is a bit of uncertainty. I mean, we have their high school tape, but we don't have them competing against kind of top tier athletes. So it'll be really interesting to see how Green's stock kind of fluctuates or develops as the G League Ignite takes shape. Green, what I've noticed, he's a really athletic scorer. He's an ISO player, really athletic and quick. And that's what I'm impressed by. I think defensively, he is 6'5". He'll offer you good size at shooting guard. For me, the jump shot, a bit inconsistent. That's my fear. And the shot selection, there are concerns over as well. But with a guy with so much talent, so much upside, if you can control that and maybe he develops as a more consistent shooter with pressure on him, I think that he could be a very, very good NBA player.
Yeah, I totally agree. He's very explosive coming off the pick and roll. I think he needs to get better on his ball handling, especially going left off the pick and roll. But I think he's very explosive, got a quick first step. And, like you said, inconsistent shooting. But I think he can find his groove in the NBA. And I think playing in the G League will really help him in that aspect, playing against older guys. Really just getting a feel for the game. And I love Jalen Green. I love what he brings to the game. And on defense, I think he can get after it with his long frame, long body. I think he can definitely get after it on defense. And he still needs to improve on that side, but I think he can. He's not bad on the defensive side.
Yeah.
Right. I agree with all the statements that you guys made. I mean, I think he's also, like you guys said, he's got pretty good defensive upside. He's got pretty active hands just because of his intangibles and everything. He's got a little bit of shooting potential. The problem is the inconsistency and the shot selection, like you stated earlier, Sam. But I mean, yeah, he's got a quick first step, potential playmaker. That's something that a lot of people don't really see. I feel like once he, corrects his mistakes as far as decision-making, he throws a ton of lazy passes. That's probably just because he's been able to get away with it at the high school level. But I think once he cracks down on that and he learns to, attack going left a little bit more, and I just feel like his entire game will fall into place. And he could possibly be a number one pick over Cade Cunningham.
Yeah, and I think it really depends on how we see him shape up in the G League. But I think you're going to see some growing pains with him just because, like you said, he is used to getting away with certain kind of sloppier plays at the high school level that in the G League he might get it punished for. But I think that this is an incredible talent. You'll still see Green get taken in the top 5 pretty much regardless of performance, just based on the fact that a lot of these kind of drawbacks people talk about aren't things that aren't fixable. Like, I mean, your jump shot can get better. We've seen that in the NBA. Kawhi is the prime example of that. You can improve on shot selection and decision making, and that's just something that will happen as you mature against professional competition. I think Jalen Green is going to be a great fit for wherever he winds up, and that prompts the question for me. I think when I'm looking down the list, we talked about this yesterday, but I really like the Thunder. I think that they're looking for some sort of alpha scorer. Yes, Shea is a phenomenal player, but is he going to be your number one scorer on a championship team? I don't know. I think he's going to be a phenomenal guy to lead your offense. I think when you have a guy like Jalen Green who can play off the ball, get good looks from Shea, who's going to draw some of the defense with his drives, I think that he would fit in great. And then again, with his athleticism and length, he should be able to bother opposing guards defensively. So he would fit in nicely next to Lou Dort. I think it's a similar logic with Kuminga, which we'll get into later.
Yeah. Yeah, I love him. Actually, I love him next to Darius Bazley, too. I think all those young guys, Shea, Darius Bazley, Lou Dort, I think that with Jalen Green, I think they will all come together and really play well with all their athleticism.
Right, I agree 100% as well. I mean, the Thunder, they got a pretty nice young core. We see them they got a ton of draft assets to, deal with in the near future. But I mean, it's like what you said earlier, Sam. I mean, they're in need of a dominant scorer. Jalen Green, his play style, with him being able to not only make shots at a high level and attack the basket, but he'll also be able to get guys like Lou Dort involved, kind of take the pressure off of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and just be able to, create a ton of offense, especially in transition. He's a pretty good passer in transition just because he draws so much defense towards the opposing team because he's so athletic. He's, one of the best. He's going to be one of the best players on the court on a nightly basis. So I feel like the Thunder is one of the best spots for him as well.
And the biggest thing for me as well, we talk about Baisley, we talk about Dort, we talk about Shea. This is a guy who aligns with that timeline. I think that the Thunder have pretty clearly committed to kind of rebuilding, even though they are very competitive in a lot of these games. I think you have all of these cornerstones are in place. You need maybe one more alpha to get the job done. I think Green can absolutely be that alpha. He fits in really well. Another place that I was kind of more intrigued by, I don't think it's as good a fit as the Thunder, but I kind of am intrigued by the Kings. Buddy Hield re-signed obviously this offseason, but he's always been oscillating between being happy and maybe a little more unhappy in that system. The coaching situation is fluid. I think there's a lot of uncertainties in Sacramento. My logic is you slot Green in at that shooting guard spot if Hield winds up departing, or if you see maybe long-term, despite the contract, there's potential for Hield to be a bit upset. You throw Green in that shooting guard spot next to Fox. I think that works perfectly. And then also Halliburton, you can fully commit him to leading the second unit. I think Tyrese Halliburton, I love him as a prospect. I think he's incredibly well-rounded. I think you slot him in, and his versatility at the second unit would be incredible. And also you could bounce it around a bit. Maybe you throw Halliburton in there with Green, and you see how that works as well. I think that just, there's so many possibilities with the versatility of a guy, a 6'6", 6'7" guy in Halliburton that you can deploy with Green or on the second unit.
Yeah, that Sacramento, I actually forgot about them. I feel like Kuminga would be a slightly better fit just because of his size and versatility at that position. But I think another team that would be, beneficial to for Jalen Green to play for is the Toronto Raptors. I mean, it goes back to what we were saying earlier. They're in need of a dominant scorer. Pascal Siakam, with him not being, he's always been, your third, second option. He's not really used to being your number one option. It's a lot of people that make it seem like this team has fallen off a cliff. I just feel like they're in need of one missing piece, that two guard position, and they're probably gonna need a big as well, just because Aaron Banks, he hasn't performed well this season. But I feel like implementing Green into that offense, he'd increase their pace just because this is a guy you have to allow him to play in transition, because that's probably what he's best at this stage of his career. They're currently ranked 16th in pace in the entire NBA, so that would, implementing Green on your roster, that would help that their ranking go up severely. He would also be pretty good as one of their primary scorers. Like I said, they're in need of scoring, a dominant scorer, because, you have, depending on guys like Van Vliet, Lowry's obviously not going to be there long-term with the speculation, the allegation that's been going on with him. But like I said, Siakam also hasn't been your guy. And OG Anunoby and Stanley Johnson, guys like that, they're bench. They're a pretty deep team. So I just feel like Jalen Green's that one missing piece, because they're in need of an alpha, and I think he can be that guy that will be able to put them over the top.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, and also, I also think about, right, if Lowry's out, you shift Van Vliet to point guard. We know he can handle the ball. He played point guard in college. You put Green in the shooting guard spot. There's a lot of different combinations you can have there in your backcourt that are intriguing, regardless of whether or not Lowry is on the roster. So I do like Toronto as well. I think you bring up great points there.
Yep.
All right, and the next prospect we're going into is Evan Mobley. In many mock drafts, he's listed as second, but again, this really depends on how the G League guys develop. With Mobley, the big thing I notice is he is a finesse big. He's great at ball handling. He's very fluid, quick, and mobile. You're not going to have conditioning issues with him. The issue is he needs to put on some mass. And his passing ability, really good for a big, and he's shown credible shooting ability. The three-point shot is in the low 30%, but again, he's shown good stroke. That will develop, I think, as his NBA career progresses, and a phenomenal rim protector, averaging 2.9 blocks a night. The big concern with him outside of just not a big build is him getting pushed around in the post, especially early in his career. Defensive rebounding numbers have been listed as a weakness, despite the fact that he is averaging around 8.9 rebounds a night in college. I don't know how reliable that's going to translate to the NBA level. So for him, he's going to have to come into the league and put on some muscle. And I think that in terms of building a fit, that's going to be relevant. You're going to want maybe him beside a guy who's big, stocky, can bully teams and get rebounds, so you don't hemorrhage boards on the defensive end.
Yeah, I love those points. You brought up a great point about him bringing up the ball. When he grabs the ball, off the defensive rebound, he can push it up in transition. I've definitely seen him do that during the Pac-12 games. But yeah, you said some great points about him in the pick and roll and how he can come off the screen and really he can knock down the shot if he's wide open. And I like his touch around the rim. But yeah, one big downside about him is his weight. And yeah, he has got pushed around has got pushed around from those tactical bigs, those bigger bigs, and yeah, he really needs to put on some weight. And I think if a team does draft him, they really just need to hone in on them skills and like really put him in position. Also put him in position because I think his intangibles and what his feel for the game is really really good. But if you're not going to have the weight, I think being in the right position on the defensive side will help him.
Right. I mean, I love Evan Mobley as a prospect. I mean, depending on what team is in need of a big, that'll probably decide which roster he'd be attending. But I mean, we all know he's got a pretty long wingspan. He's a mobile big, very versatile. You guys mentioned that he can put the ball on the ground. He's able to shoot the ball just a tad bit, but I'll take it for I'm saying a 7-footer. But we already know he's athletic. My thing about Evan Mobley is the fact that he can actually defend on the perimeter. So on the NBA level, him getting switched off to the smaller guards in the pick and roll, I think he'd be able to hold his own like guys like Anthony Davis, Rudy Gobert, and Jared Allen as well. So I mean, my only concerns about him is obviously what you guys stated earlier, his weight and everything, being bumped into the lower post and all that, it's going to be a problem. But I mean, defensively, he's got all the tools. He just needs to add a little bit more weight to his body.
Yeah, and I think that when I'm thinking fit, that's the biggest thing I try to kind of accommodate for. And I think the Timberwolves actually do that. You put him next to Karl Anthony Towns, the possibilities are endless for me. One, you have Towns kind of offsetting the fact that maybe Mobley isn't the best on the defensive glass early in his career because obviously Towns is a big, stocky frame, really good defensively. You have two guys who can swap the living daylights out of people. I think that's going to be a nightmare for opposing guards driving. And then the big thing for me is because of Mobley's range, you can run these inside out sets where you can send Mobley up on a pick and roll, maybe catch him at the high key and then throw a big to big lob down low for Towns. I think that's really adds a layer of unpredictability for the offense because if they're not doing that, Mobley's pulling up or maybe he's even driving. I think Evan Mobley kind of right inside that 3-point arc, catching the ball off of a pick and slip or something like that can really create problems for opposing defenses and opposing bigs.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like he's just very comfortable in the offensive end, and it's kind of weird to see that as a 7-foot big, but he has a lot of tools in his offensive bag, and I love to see it. I love Evan Mobley, I really do. And the team that I think he could fit on, if they would want to get rid of Steven Adams, I think the New Orleans Pelicans, him and Jackson Hayes, I think if they go the younger route, him and Jackson Hayes can really feed off each other because Jackson Hayes has a high motor. But I think what Evan Mobley brings on the offensive side that Jackson Hayes doesn't have, they could really work well together.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of you guys' points, man. I think New Orleans, they also need a big that can really stretch the floor because it's an awkward position putting Zion and Steven Adams on the lower block. They kind of take up room for each other. The paint is very clogged and the spacing is very awkward. But yeah, Sam, I agree with you that Evan Mobley's best possible fit is probably the Minnesota Timberwolves. It goes back to what you were saying. He can on the defensive end, those two can kind of offset each other. Like you mentioned, Karl Anthony Towns can grab all the rebounds and, what's his name? Evan Mobley, he'll be able to defend guys in the pick and roll and everything like that. But I mean, I also feel like offensively, he's very interchangeable. You can place him in multiple spots on the floor, just because he's got the ability to stretch it out for you. And he can also play inside. He's pretty athletic as well. But one thing that I feel like is a moneymaker for him is the fact that he's a 7-footer that can play make. Him and Karl Anthony Towns, they will be able to have a nice little 2-man game. He's excellent hitting cutters and making reads and everything. So I feel like Minnesota Timberwolves will be a match made in heaven for Evan Mobley.
Absolutely. And also, I mean, we talk about maybe you don't want another ball dominant guy next to D'Lo, just based on the fact that D'Lo's game is built on pick and roll and handling and maybe pulling out to shoot. Mobley's not that guy. Mobley can dribble and he can play make, but he can run pick and rolls really effectively with a guy like D'Lo. And I mean, Cat already does that. I just think that pairing with them and then D'Angelo Russell is very fitting for the Timberwolves offense going forward. And he adds that help defensively to Minnesota because of his shot blocking ability. Maybe he gets pushed around in the post, but as he puts on weight, I don't think that's as much of a case anymore. For New Orleans, I also wrote that down as a potential fit. I don't mind it, actually. I think he fits better with Zion than Steven Adams. Zion's obviously bigger, so he can kind of offset kind of maybe the limitations. I think defensive rebounding is still going to be an issue, given that Zion, when he plays the 5, those lineups are really bad at rebounding defensively. Offensive rebounds could be very intriguing, though. I know Zion's good on the offensive glass. And defensively, the thing I like in that pairing with Mobley and Zion is we know Zion's athletic and we know Zion's quick, but he does kind of overcommit on the defensive end, and he does get beat, and he does miss rotations. You have a guy like Mobley, who's the ultimate neutralizer around the rim to clean that up. I really actually don't mind that fit either.
Yeah. I feel like Mobley, my last point for him, him going to Minnesota, it would allow the lane to, you know what I'm saying, be a little bit more open. He spaces the floor out for you pretty well, because with him being 7-footer, they're obviously going to place a big on him. So if they space him out to one of the short corners, or, you know what I'm saying, have him pick and pop in pick and roll situations and have him knock down threes and stuff, kind of like how James Wiseman has been playing in Golden State, it would be able to take bigs away from the basket, leaving more room for guys, for cutters, and just more room for Karl Anthony Towns to operate in the low post.
Those are all points I agree with as well. Do we have anything else on Mobley, or should we hit our last prospect in Kuminga here?
We can move on.
All right. Jonathan Kuminga, again, another prospect we're a little uncertain about, just based on the fact that he has only really played high school competition. He's going to play for G League Ignite, so hopefully you have more clarity on him. He's a 6'8", 210 wing, and he adds a lot of versatility to your lineup. He's really athletic, and I think he's going to be good defensively. He's a 3-level scorer and an ISO scorer. I think that brings any intriguing layer to offenses that maybe need that alpha. The concern with him is there is uncertainty whether his shot will translate, very similarly to Green. And then there's questions about maybe his facilitation ability and shot selection, just given that a lot of people think maybe he has a bit of a me-first approach offensively. I think that will get ironed out in the G League, just based on the fact that, again, these are things that you can control and learn from in a professional environment. He's never been in an environment like that, just because his last experience is at high school. I think that gets ironed out in the G League Ignite. And I think, again, while you might see some growing pains, he's going to be a phenomenal pro who can really score at any level of the floor.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think studying him and what I was watching on him is really just like he came to the U.S. when he was 13, and then he started playing basketball when he was 14. So really, he's 17 now, or 18. So he's only been playing the game for like 4 years. So the progression that he's had these 4 years is really amazing. I see he's a slasher. I think he's just a shot maker. He has great mechanics. Then I think he has a high release point, and they really compare him to Pascal Siakam, which I can see. He has a high motor. He can come off the pick and roll. He has a great first step. But yeah, like you said, Sam, I think his decision making really needs to get better, and I would love to see that over the G League, and I think it will. I think he will develop that along in this G League season. But I love what he brings to the game. I love his hustle on the defensive end too. He's very long, 6'11" wingspan. He really gets after it on the defensive end as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a guy, he's best putting pressure on the rim in a half court set. That's when, you know, you're getting the best version of Jonathan Kuminga. But you know, he's kind of drawn outside of Pascal Siakam. He's drawing comparisons to guys like Jaylen Brown. I can see the similarities. You know, being able to, you know what I'm saying, make decisions attacking the basketball. I mean, one thing that we all know that he needs to improve on is deferring to his teammates a little bit. I studied a little bit of his G League Ignite film, and, you know, he kind of broke down film with a guy named Mike. I forget what his last name is, but
Mark Schwartz. Yeah,
they both discussed how, you know, he needs to make better reads when attacking the basket, because, you know, he's one of the most athletic players in this entire draft class. And with that being said, he's going to draw a lot of attention to the defense anytime he's attacking the lane. Now, one thing that I feel like he needs to improve on outside of his passing ability is just making shots on a consistent basis, which is something that, you know, I don't feel like he will struggle with too much at the NBA level. But I just feel like that's also one of his biggest knocks to his game overall.
Yeah, like I said, I like the versatility in his scoring. I think Greg brought up a great point in that he can also post up. So I think that that's just an incredible combination. When you have a guy who can score off the bounce, a guy who can hit off mid rangers, or a guy who can ISO or play off the pick and roll. I like that. But again, you nicely brings up good points as well. In that, will the shooting translate consistently enough? Similar questions to Green in that sense. And maybe will he become a little bit more of an unselfish player as time develops? I think when I look at fit, I like the Thunder personally. They need an alpha scorer, as we talked about, to put them over the top. I said similar things with Green. And I think Shea is very unselfish in many ways. He will be able to defer to Kuminga enough, and he'll set him up for good looks. I think it'd be an athletic freak of a lineup. You put Kuminga next to Dort and Bazley in a lineup, that's an absolute wreck defensively. I think maybe Kuminga can speed you up a bit more as well. The Thunder seem like they're still transitioning out of that Chris Paul era. They play at a faster pace than they did with Chris Paul, but not quite up there with the top tier of the league in pace from what I understand. I think like we talked about, he matches the young pieces. Kuminga's age is a really big boon to his stock because he reclassed. I think that fits in very well, the Thunder's young pieces. And yeah, I think overall, just the lockdown and the switchability defensively and the athleticism, when we talk about that death lineup with Dort, maybe Shea, maybe Bazley, and then Kuminga, that's going to be really scary for opposing teams.
Yeah, I agree with you because like taking the pressure off of him and not having the ball as much, I think relying on Shea and Lou Dort and Bazley takes the pressure off Kuminga because sometimes I saw when he was in high school playing for the Patrick School, his ball handling was kind of tough coming off the pick and roll when they threw some bodies at him, and he couldn't really, besides if he can't come off the screen with that quick first step, he really does struggle trying to get to the basket, or he throws up a little flare shot or a little floater that doesn't go in. It's kind of off balance. So I think developing his ball handling and really taking the pressure off of him if he was on the Thunder will really help him develop in the league.
I feel like the Thunder is a decent spot, but my only thing is I feel like if I'm the Thunder and Jalen Green is available, I'd much rather take Jalen Green over Kuminga just because like you said, I mean, they have a pretty decent lineup: Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Lou Dort, Darius Bazley, and some other young guys. But I just feel like Jalen Green being a more reliable shooter next to Lou Dort instead of Jonathan Kuminga, because we know Jonathan Kuminga, his jump shot, it's slightly iffy. It's not as consistent as I feel like Jalen Green. He's just a more reliable fit from that aspect of the game. But I feel like the best fit for him is I have the Sacramento Kings and the Houston Rockets. For Sacramento to begin with, I mean, they don't really have any forwards. They're very guard heavy, and they have a ton of bigs down there. You got Marvin Bagley, Holmes, and at the guard position, you got De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, Kyle Guy. I mean, the list goes on. So that small forward position has kind of been the missing piece to that entire roster. I mean, I believe they still have Harrison Barnes. I'm not sure if he's injured or not, but he doesn't really seem to be like the piece moving forward. So I feel like Kuminga, with his versatility, being able to knock down shots at a decent rate, because he won't be able to, they won't rely on him too much for that, just because they have guys like Halliburton and Hield who can, knock down shots at an efficient rate. But implementing Kuminga into that offense, his versatility will allow him to play multiple positions and be able to insert him in multiple lineups. So I feel like that will benefit Sacramento more. But as far as Houston, he wouldn't have as big as a role if he went to Houston as opposed to Sacramento. But I do feel like they kind of need that 1-2-3 punch. John Wall and Victor Oladipo, these are two guys that have something to prove this season. And they've honestly been playing pretty well for two guys, who've kind of been written off by the league within these past couple of seasons. But the only question is, what are they planning on doing with Kevin Porter? I mean, they just recently signed him. I know he's playing in the G League right now with them. Well, he will be playing in the G League for their Houston team. But I just feel like Jonathan Kuminga is a better fit small forward-wise with those other guys, just because he's more of a versatile player overall.
Yeah, I think you bring up good points there as well. I mean, my biggest concern with Green was the sheer guard depth, and you throw Kuminga in at small forward, that makes things a lot more interesting. Also, you already have a lot of versatility kind of along guard spots with or along forward spots with the Thunder in Dort, in Baisley. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And also, I like that you brought up Houston because I actually had them listed as well. I think that he's obviously a great scoring option to go alongside Oladipo. I think John Wall, I mean, look, he's been shown flashes of his old self for them and been really, really good, but I don't think he's going to be long-term at point guard. And even if he is for a couple more seasons, I don't think that fit with Kuminga is that bad. My concern, though, is, right, if you're playing Wall, Kuminga, Oladipo on the court at the same time, that is a bit cramped, especially because Oladipo's three-point percentage, it's like around 34. I know it's been up and down kind of his whole career. He shot higher clips, so he has potential to obviously shoot better, and he's coming off those injuries from last season. So, I mean, maybe that fit works out better than I thought. Also, look, with Christian Wood as well as an option, maybe Kuminga, when he gets into trouble, can find Wood down on the block for layups, or maybe Wood popping out for a jump shot. So I think that doesn't necessarily fit too poorly at all either.
Yeah, I think especially because I've been hearing rumors that Victor might leave Houston after the season. So if they lose Victor and they plug in Jonathan Kuminga, I think him playing alongside John Wall and Christian Wood, I think that'll help him a lot with the athleticism that he brings to the game.
Yeah, and at that point, the question is, can they just throw in a bona fide shooter? I know, obviously, Eric Gordon's still there, so maybe you throw him in more lineups, maybe get a couple guys in free agency if you can with cap space.
Agreed.
All right, so if we don't have anything more to talk about on the prospects, we can maybe mention, do you guys have one sleeper that kind of pops to the top of your head right now that you're interested in?
Me personally, I really have been a fan of Mac McClung's play this season. I mean, this is a guy coming from transfer from Georgetown who was kind of a little bit under the radar, just known as a dunker. I think with the way that he's been playing at Texas Tech, he's shown not only can he put the ball in the basket and get his teammates involved, but he's shown his leadership and, being able to win games, which is the most important aspect of the basketball. So I feel like Mac McClung has definitely risen his draft stock. He could potentially be mid-first rounder, in my opinion.
What about you, Greg? You have anyone that pops?
I really like Josh Christopher. He's doing really good for Arizona State. I think he has to do a lot just because the team is not as good. But I think he can come in and bring a spark. He can be that spark plug because he can shoot the shit out of the ball. He can really light up the scoreboard. And I think he has a lot of development to go. But I think on the offensive end, he brings so much. So I would love to see him around the maybe 15 to 20, maybe around that range.
Yeah, for me, my guys projected a little lower in the lottery, but still in there. A lot of more casual fans probably haven't heard of him. James Bouknight out of UConn. I'm from Connecticut. I'm not a UConn fan, but I really respect this guy's game. Very, very fluid with the ball. He's a really good shooter. He can score at all three levels. I think he's a decent facilitator as well. I know he's averaging over 20 points a night. I think his assist numbers might be, I don't know if it's around 4, but something's jogging my memory that it seems to be like decent assist numbers. Defensively, there are maybe a few concerns, but he's got good length. I think he could play shooting guard pretty well in the NBA. And despite the elbow surgery that's keeping him out probably for at least another month, if not the rest of the year, I think his game is going to translate very well. He's big, he's long, he's a good shooter. I think that there aren't many drawbacks with James Bouknight. I think he's a complete player. He has had another kind of half a season in college before he got hurt to develop. I really like his game.
Agreed.
Yeah, I heard he's projected to go to New York. I'm not sure how I feel about that fit, just because they have a ton of ISO players over there who won't necessarily defer to ball dominant point guard like him, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're just gonna have to see how that works. I know he's gonna be probably in the around the 8 to probably 13 range. I think you bring up a good point. New York, though, obviously a lot of ball dominant point guards. They're talking about getting maybe a veteran like D Rose as well, and we were talking about that last night. Of course, that would be maybe a 1-2 season solution, but yeah, I think that Bouknight will be a good fit for a lot of teams that maybe are looking for that alpha scorer.
Agreed, 100%.
Agreed.
All right. Well, we'd like to thank you guys for tuning in to this draft night or kind of draft prospect special. Thank you to the boys from the Ball Fake podcast for coming on and joining me. It was great talking these prospects with you guys tonight.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, you can catch them at the Ball Fake Podcast on YouTube. Their Instagram is the same as well. And make sure you tune in and show them some love.